everyone. So I wanted to make a quick video today, just in response to some of the weirdness that has been happening in the world over the last few months. We've seen a lot of riots on both sides of the aisle for different reasons. We've seen people very polarized when it comes to the coronavirus, when it comes to the Black Lives Matter protests. It seems that every few weeks the different side of the aisle is, coming up in arms about something. And one thing I just want to point out is just a little bit some of the, I would call it hypocrisy. I would call it hypocrisy that I am seeing on both sides of the aisle. So I'm going to start with the beginning. With the coronavirus. We saw a lot of conservative people at that point, coming out and protesting against, why is the government telling my private business what to do? Why are I being told to wear a mask in certain places? Why am I being told this? Why am I not given an option? And what I want to say about that, first of all, is oftentimes the same people who are saying, oh, why am I having to wear a mask in this store, were the same people a few years ago who, when we were talking about, there was an Indiana bakery who wouldn't make a cake for a gay couple, for their wedding or whatever, and that made big news, and it was this whole thing of should the government get involved if a private business doesn't want to do something? And a lot of people on the right were like, no, the private business should be allowed to choose. But what's very funny is as soon as a private business wants them to wear a mask, they're all up in arms, okay? So I think there's hypocrisy there. At the same time, I do think it is a private business's right to be able to tell you what you can do in their store. I do think that's absolutely fair. The government should not be involved in private business. We're not a communist country here in the United States. That said, I will say that it's been very disheartening when the right started protesting against not necessarily wearing a mask, but more importantly, the fact that they were told that they had to close down if they were deemed non-essential. They were forced to do that. And I think reasonably these people were upset because they're like, well, this is my business. I built this up. I cannot afford to not be in business for a month or two. So there were people that were basically saying, it's my decision. Why is the government making this decision for me? I think that was a very reasonable worry for people. Now, I know you might be saying, well, it's, the coronavirus. It was very scary. It's supposed to, be wiping out thousands of people. One thing I want to say about this, and I will refer you more over to Dr. Pamela Popper for some of the more, scientific basis for this, but I will say this. You can find easily online spokespersons on the left and on the right basically saying, hey, this is how we are recording the people who are getting coronavirus here in the United States. Or I'm sorry, the deaths related to it. Basically, doctors have been told if anyone has been tested positive for the coronavirus and then dies from literally anything else, it could be a car accident, it could be lung cancer, it could be literally anything. On the death certificate, they are going to count that as a death from corona. That process is unprecedented for any other kind of illness. Any kind of other illness. Why are they doing that for coronavirus? I don't know. I don't know, but they are. So when we see these very large numbers of, oh my God, 100,000 plus people have died within the last few months from the coronavirus, that's not true. That's not true. Now, understand that when we get the flu or a cold or anything, oftentimes we will not have symptoms of that cold. Our immune system is dealing with it just fine. It's creating immunities for it. That's the whole purpose of our immune system. But it's if we were tested for those, those flus or colds while we had it in our system, we would have tested positive. That doesn't mean that it's negatively impacting our health. So the reason for that, the reason I bring this out, is that you can be dying of lung cancer and you might also have a cold on top of it. Doctors do not record it as dying of cold and lung cancer. That's not done. So this is really unheard of, this whole process that they have been told to do. If you actually look at some of the reports from Dr. Pamela Popper, I will refer you to her once more, you will see that the numbers for corona are not really that much higher than the annual flu. It's really not. So you might say, okay, well, first of all, I'm going to check on that. Please do. Please don't take my word for it. Please don't take other people's word for it. Please do your own research. Why do I say that? Why can't I just watch Fox News? Why can't I not just watch CNN and whatever they tell me just believe? These are, sources that we consider, high level. Because basically virtually all the mainstream media is owned by 6 corporations and 15 billionaires. Okay? That's what the entire media is based off of. That is a very small amount of people who could have the power to sway the media however they want. However they want. And they do. It doesn't take much digging to see how they have done that in the past. So, sometimes, yes, we can believe what's on the mainstream news, but it is always good to always check the sources. Always check the sources. Because even sometimes when things are not, or things are disproven, they don't make it onto the mainstream media again. They don't always correct themselves if they are found wrong. So just keep an eye open for that. Another thing I want to talk about is the protest for the Black Lives Matter movement. I hope it's no surprise to you that here in the United States there still is a lot of racial discrimination. There's a lot of racism in general. Racism has never gone away. And I hope that people know that. I think people do know that to an extent. Some people obviously don't, but a lot of people do. And so I think when people see like the Black Lives Matter movement come out with protests, a lot of people are like, oh my God, I support this wholeheartedly. And then when they see the riots, they're like, well, like, what do you expect? There's been a violent society that has forced people of color into a small box. There has been so much violence on the side of, the oppressor. Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And quite frankly, if you are, I do believe in the moral aspect of self-defense. Absolutely. And I think it's kind of a gray area where it's like if you have been put in a violent system and you cannot escape the violent system and then you act violent toward it, is that self-defense? It might be. I haven't really thought that through already, but I don't think we have to decide that right now when we see things like what we've seen with like the AutoZone destruction. If you watch the video, I'm going to leave that link to that video in the description box. If you watch this, like destruction of the AutoZone company here in this video, you will see that something's not right. This person who's causing the destruction, they're not part of the Black Lives Matter protest. They're not. There's someone who has come in for one reason or another to basically incite violence. Now, you might say, well, who would want to do that? Could it be a white supremacist group? Could it be basically someone who has more, nefarious reasons for wanting people to see these as destructive protests? I think there are a lot of people who would benefit from that. I'm not going to get too much into that in this video. But I do recommend watching that, and I think that's a big thing. If we are criticizing the Black Lives Matter protests, we have to understand we just don't have the information. We don't know how many of these protesters are actually causing the damage and who is coming in and infiltrating it. We just don't have this information. I do want to say one thing, though. Now, this has kind of been floating around the internet as something like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. And I'll tell you what the conspiracy theory is. Basically, the conspiracy theory is that George Soros, who is a big-time billionaire, he donated millions of dollars to fund Black Lives Matter. This is true. This is absolutely true. You can look that up. Mainstream media reports this. The thing is is that George Soros also owns AutoZone, and he has a lot of shares in Target. Now, these were two of the big time destruction businesses that happened during the protests. They were, people broke into these businesses on social media. These were huge things. And basically what people have been saying is that there have been quotes of George Soros saying in the past in private interviews that he believes that the black community is one of the easiest to manipulate, and basically he has, nefarious plans for America. Okay. The thing is, this cannot be proven. Well, from what I have seen, I have not seen any record of these conversations. A lot of them were reported to have happened in, private meetings with journalists, but they never made it out onto like an actual paper. So it's very hard to confirm this. Doesn't mean it's not true. Doesn't mean that. I think it's very interesting. I think it's very convenient that someone who's funding Black Lives Matter also, we're seeing, these planted people causing destruction to certain particular businesses. I think it's interesting. I think it's something to keep an eye on, but I can't say 100%, oh yeah, George Soros is behind it. There have been rumors that he is involved with satanic cults. Again, I can't find proof of this, but here's my thing. When we hear certain conspiracy theories that have that word conspiracy theory tagged to it, should we completely dismiss it? Because if you don't know, the conspiracy theory term basically became very prevalent during the Nixon era. In fact, people who were saying, oh, basically they were telling about Watergate before it had to come to the notice of the whole populace. They were basically alluding to this, and people were like, you're a conspiracy theorist. Actually, the Nixon administration used this term, you're a conspiracy theorist, dismiss it. Of course, this conspiracy theory about Nixon came to light a little time later, and it was found, okay, it wasn't not true, but that term stuck, and anything that goes against the mainstream media, whether it's, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, or it's, pandemic or anything like that, people immediately say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory because it goes against the mainstream media's narrative, okay? Now, we have to acknowledge that some conspiracy theories are false. But I think it's very important when we hear something and it has been labeled a conspiracy theory, we actually look into it. We don't say, oh, well, it has that word attached to it, so it's stupid for me to even think it might be true. There's a lot of evidence that certain conspiracy theories actually have a substantial amount of evidence. Some can completely be shown as true. Some it's well, we can't say for certain, but there's enough there's enough evidence here to suggest that maybe it is. So we have to put a pin in it. We can't just say, oh, absolutely not. I was looking, as I was doing research for this video, I was looking at the George Soros quotes, and I looked on Snopes, and Snopes is one of those things that likes to fact check things. And it was saying, did George Soros say, the black community is the easiest to manipulate, yada, yada, yada. And they're like, false. And basically the reason they were saying false is they're like, we have no publicized evidence, in a paper or a recorded interview, that shows he ever said this. Okay, you don't have that recording. Could he have said it? Yes, he could have said it. So why are you saying it's false? You could say, there's no reason for us to believe this yet. Sure, I just don't like the absolute black and white that's so close-minded, stop there, stop researching there. We've decided it is false because we've not found anything yet. I don't like that at all. I do not recommend doing that in your life. Anyway, that's all for my video today. Thanks for watching. One more thing before I end the video. I wanted to say one thing that I have noticed, because I talked about the polarization of the country right now. And basically we saw when the people on the right were protesting against basically their freedom to choose when it came to shutting down for the coronavirus scare. The left were like, these protests are stupid. They're absolutely stupid. Why are people doing that? Have more care. And then when the Black Lives Matter protests began, we see a lot of people on the right saying, this is stupid. Why are you doing this? You're causing all this violence. Stop it. And the point I want to make here, and I've seen it a lot in my social media feed because I have friends from both sides of the aisle, and they've just been so passionately hateful against, both sides for having these feelings of, we're being dominated. Both sides feel like they're being dominated by the system. The right feels that they're being dominated by being told that they have to close their businesses, their way of life, their means of a living. The left feels like they're having their rights stomped on beyond just the racism, but even more so how their protests have been infiltrated, how police and military officials have been deployed to go out and cause harm and stop the protests. A lot of these people feel like their rights are being infringed on, and they're basically living in a military state. Both sides are feeling this. And I hate to say it, no, I want to say it, is that this is the same system. Guys, you are fighting against the same system of control. Please realize that. Please realize that. And my fear is that basically half the country is going to think the other half of the country is their enemy, when really our enemy is this corrupt system of control. Please realize that. Because I'm afraid that we're going to get confused as to who we should really be fighting in this if we don't make that realization. Okay, that's all. Thanks, guys.